thank you for tuning in. This is the Mito podcast, and I am Ashley.
And I'm Megan.
Today, we have a very special guest. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
My name is Raquel, full name Raquel Cahill. We have a daughter who's almost 4 and has Leigh syndrome.
Awesome. We're really excited to be able to talk to you today. And something that we don't actually tell all of our listeners is we're all really pretty relaxed. But Raquel got dressed up today. She's looking on fleek. Yeah. Megan and I feel bad because I didn't even do my hair. It's slicked back into a tight ponytail right now. But the podcast is pretty relaxed and we just like to talk. And so that's pretty much what everyone is going to be listening to today. So we just wanted to reach out and talk to another family who is affected by mitochondrial disease. One thing I wanted to point out before we get started, something that I kind of was thinking about the last couple of days about Leigh syndrome, because I don't know about you guys, but for me, I hear a lot of diagnoses that start off with Leigh syndrome. And sometimes they stick with that diagnosis, sometimes it changes. And just in my own thoughts on it is I kind of feel like sometimes doctors might go to the worst diagnosis first, and then as time goes on, the diagnosis might change. So it's almost like a worst case scenario. How do you guys kind of feel about that?
I definitely agree. I think Troy was diagnosed with Leigh-like syndrome before any genetic testing or anything was done. He didn't have lesions on his brain, which is kind of a characteristic of Leigh syndrome. But I think when they show signs so early, I think that is definitely the first thing they go to, unless they have that genetic testing done, obviously very quickly, which doesn't typically happen. So I do feel like that is one when the child is born and starts showing signs very early, that's typically what they start with. And of course, we know that is one of the harder diagnoses when you're talking about mitochondrial disease.
So how about for Ruby? How did you guys get diagnosed with Leigh syndrome, or what were the symptoms prior to diagnosis?
Well, she was born perfectly healthy. I don't like to say normal, I like to say typical. I guess in the nursing field, that's what happens anyway. She was born, I had like 1 semester of nursing school left to go. And everything was great. Like I didn't breastfeed because I knew I was going back to work and I had to go back to school for my last semester. And there's no way you're going to put like clinical rotations on hold so you can go pump and everything. So I did it for 2 weeks and I was like, this kind of hurts. And she doesn't seem to like it that much anyway. So whatever. So I just stopped and she got formula, which was fine. She was meeting her milestones and everything. And then she turned 4 months, and I would say like at 4.5 months, she kind of stopped progressing. She didn't regress, but she just stopped progressing. So the pediatrician we had at the time, it's such an example of when people say, oh, well, if you don't quite like get along with your pediatrician, find another one. Well, I was a new mom, so a lot of these things I was like, I'm probably just not doing this right. I don't know what I'm doing, obviously. And I was really like depending on him to kind of like show me. And when I said, I just did my OB rotation and my peds rotation, and this doesn't seem normal to me. He's like, it's fine. And just that. So I was like, okay. So I'm not like totally putting like the blame on him, but I just was like, okay, I guess it is fine. And even my mom was like, some kids just do things a little bit later than others, but she'll get there. And I said, okay, great. But the more I started noticing, like she wasn't reaching for things anymore. At like 6 months, at her 6 months eval, like her head, she was not holding really her head as much as she should. So he said, I think she just needs a little bit of PT, which when I researched, I realized that's super common too. So I said, this is probably what we were missing. So, he was right about that. So it's probably fine. But then I noticed she stopped. So at like 7 months, I was like, she's not rolling over anymore. She's not babbling anymore. And it wasn't until I really started to notice that, like I made an appointment with a neurologist anyway, kind of around him. And then when he called, like the nurse called to see like how things were going. And I said, well, she's not doing this and this anymore. And she's like, oh, you might want to speak with a neurologist. And I just said, oh, okay, that's great. But I had already made my appointment because I was like, I don't think I trust this guy anymore. And my husband was like, you don't like anybody. And I was like, maybe not. Because my mom and I are both nurses. So I was like, Mom, this just doesn't seem, okay and stuff. So I graduated and she was almost 8 months. So she was like 7 months. And so I had made an appointment with a neurologist and I took her, and with everything he was evaluating, I was like, he's not saying anything. This is probably not good. And I had a friend with me. She came with me because I was like, I don't want to go alone. And so he told me, he's like, okay, I don't like this. So I'm just going to start there. I was like, that's not a good start. Okay. And so he was like, I want to do some genetic testing. He's like, because, something's not striking me as right. And he was, I really like physicians that are more frank, but also kind of like sliding it a little gentler, but they're not beating around the bush. But he just was like, something's wrong. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to send you across the street for genetic testing and, we'll see what it says. By the way, it's going to take 12 weeks, and then just kind of like left. And so I was like, okay, well, something is wrong though. So we took her to get a blood test. And of course I was like a total mess. And then by then I had told him, I realized that she hadn't been crying like in like a month. She stopped crying. She would whine a little bit, which I was like, what is, going on with of course, I don't have anything to compare it to. She is my only child. And, I thought like I was already just on the anxiety path because when she was born, she had a little bit of an airway issue. She had a really quick procedure to get it taken care of. But here I had this newborn that had pretty bad stridor. And I was like, I'm doing something wrong and this is horrible. And then as a mom, you always blame yourself. I called the physician back. I said, okay, well, you need to see her because he wants us to come back because, and I said, by the way, she looks a little skinny to me. And I'd only just noticed how skinny she had gotten. It was so gradual. I truly didn't notice. And then when I pointed it out to my husband, he was like, oh my gosh, yeah, she really is skinny. I guess we were just too busy to notice. Like we could see her ribs and everything. And so when we took her, he said, oh, she just, might need a little bit of help, like from a feeding clinic or, give her like baby food, like spoon-fed food. And we said, well, she won't take it. And he's like, well, make her take it. I was like, how do you make her take it? And I was like, I got to be honest, I think she needs an NG tube. And all of us, like Mito parents, we know what an NG tube is. And so, but like, I know, and I was like, she needs an NG tube. And he didn't say anything for a couple seconds, but he just stared at me like really sternly. And he was like, no, if you do what I'm telling you to do, she'll be fine. And I was like, I disagree. And so my husband was with me. And so when we got to the car, he was like, he's totally blowing you off. He's like, now I'm mad. And so then he told me, the physician, he's like, if you don't like what I'm telling you, you can go see a feeding specialist. There's one at this hospital and they work with the downtown hospital. So the only way she got in there was, God made a way. It was impossible. I called and they said, okay, well, we have, and this was like May 25th. They said, meant like June 19th. And I was like, she could be in the hospital by then. And they said, we only have that appointment because someone canceled. That's it. And so I was like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And then like 4 days later, they called and they said, hey, we have an appointment tomorrow at like 8 a.m. Somebody just canceled. Do you want to take it or not? I was like, yeah. So I took her and the GI specialist there. I mean, we were there less than 10 minutes before he was like reading over her notes. And he was like, are you telling me that he's like a physician? Like your pediatrician looked at her and said, she's fine. I said, yes. And he was like, this is negligence. He's like, she needs to be admitted now. Like she needs an NG tube. And as much as I would think that, the average parent would be like, oh no, I was like, thank you. I've been saying that. I was like, I think she needs an NG. And I'm not trying to say like, oh my gosh, I'm so good. I just was like, I knew something was wrong. And I was like, if she's not taking this bottle anymore, like she just stopped sucking the bottle. She wouldn't chew anymore. I was like, she needs a feeding tube. That's just it. Like, let's do this. Like, I want it done. So he sent us home. He's like, pack a bag because I'm calling her in and we're going to be admitted right away. And that's what started the whole thing. So on June 1st was the appointment. I went home, packed a bag, and then we ended up in the children's hospital for, I think like 8 days. And then like we immediately had all these physicians coming in, and my husband went the next day because he was already at work, and he got out really, I mean, the children's hospital we went to is like almost 2 hours from us because it's downtown, and downtown is like so crazy. Even at night there's traffic. So it took us like 2 hours to get there. And so we had all these physicians coming in. So that was on, I think, a Thursday. And then Sunday is when we had different geneticists, we had different neurologists sit my husband and I down, and we said, okay, we think she has a mitochondrial disorder. Fresh out of nursing school, I was like, I've never heard of that in my life, ever, not even mentioned in passing. And they said, well, with everything that we're seeing, we looked at her genetic testing results from the neurologist, like 2 weeks ago. And I was like, oh, I thought those were going to take a long time. They said, no, the results are in, and they say like suspected mitochondrial disorder. And I was like, but what does that mean? So basically, they told us kind of what it means, the cells don't have energy and everything. And they didn't seem very grim about it. And they said, specifically, we really suspect that she has something called Leigh syndrome. And she had an MRI, and they said, due to the lesions on her brain, and the fact that it's showing now, it doesn't, and they were very matter of fact. They're like, it doesn't, look really good. A lot of times, it's very typical for the parents to outlive their children, with this. They don't typically, live beyond maybe 3, maybe 4. But we'll give you a list of mitochondrial specialists that, you can go and see, and, let us know if you have any questions. And then they left. So my husband and I were just in a room feeling like we just got slapped. And then, which I understand, like, you have to be frank, you have to be direct and say, hey, this is what we think. And then they were like, okay, see you later. And then they left. So we just were left, like, bawling in a room but they did make it seem like it was going to be very acute. Like, we didn't know how much time she had left. And then a couple of days later, we had a meeting with them, and they said, no, we're not thinking like tomorrow. We're just, things like this have like a gradual descent. And I was like, oh, great. I don't know which one's worse, but they both stink, basically. So that's like where it started. So we went home with an NG tube. We had that for about 4 months. I really wanted her to get her G tube. I was kind of like, let's do this. Like, I want this to, to keep going. Cause it's funny how in nursing school, I was terrified to have kids with G tubes. And now I'm like, it's the easiest thing ever. So that's, what started it. Obviously, there's so many tears and breakdowns in the middle of, or in between day to day. To say it's awful is an understatement, but
I think so.
As any of our parents do, we love them. You just keep going. You're like, okay, this is life now. Let's do this.
Yeah. I think so many families are terrified of the G tube or any feeding tube. It's definitely like a foreign thing. Like, you don't really see so many kids, or you don't hear about kids having G tubes or any feeding tube, like in day-to-day life, right? Like until your kid has one, you've never heard about another kid having one. It's not a secret, but it's only, people don't really talk about it that much. So it feels so foreign and terrifying, because you think you're inserting this tube into your child to be able to feed them, and the thought of it is just, it sucks. But like you said, and luckily, like, Troy doesn't have one, it's Megan's son, but Angie, I was terrified. And then once we had it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Yeah.
I can give her so much stuff. I can hydrate her. And it was more of the choice of, I don't have to use it, but it's there and I can. And it wasn't until my husband told me how to think of it differently. And I don't remember if I've said this on another podcast.
You did, and I loved that. I loved it.
It's just a piercing. It's just like you're getting your belly pierced. It just is a little bit deeper, and that's it. And that's I mean, we were pretty lucky too, because our G tube never got infected. We never had too many issues with it. I was able to keep it super clean. But yeah, it's great that you took the initiative and said, no, I want this for my child. Because a lot of times I think most parents, they need to hear that. They need to know that it's okay for you to take control and say, no, I know my child. I know she's losing weight, or I know, like, you, not saying that you're a doctor, but it's definitely saying that you're doing your research and you know what your child needs. So it's definitely worth the argument.
Yeah. I think when you were talking about how, your pediatrician, we thankfully had an amazing pediatrician that was like, okay, I don't know if there's anything wrong, but let's check on this. Let's send you. But then we got to the neurologist, and the neurologist was kind of like what your pediatrician said. Oh, they're fine. Sometimes kids take longer to reach their milestones. And, I had one friend that had a child of a similar age, and I was just like, this is not normal. Like, it's like you're going to people because it's your first, Troy's our first and only child. And it's like, I know, and I feel inside that this is not right. Even if, I don't know what I'm doing, or this is, it's just, you just get that sense. And the neurologist, we had to petition our insurance to go see a different neurologist. And right away, they're like, nope, we're going to do a muscle biopsy. There's definitely something going on. And then, like you said, how the doctors left you, I got a call on the phone that was literally like, oh, he has a mitochondrial disease. And, oh, but there's supplements and things that he can take. Like, it was a very, okay, I have no idea. And then I had to go home and research it and have that breakdown. Then it was like, oh my gosh, this is not just he has mitochondrial disease and here are the things that we can do for it. It was, your doctor's being frank with you, I think, is kind of a positive thing. Like you said, it hurts, but it's like, I went home and had to do all this internet research, and then I'm left with, what is going on? Like, what is this? And so it's, that diagnosis is just so difficult. And, like you said, you get it, you go, this is what we're dealing with. We're going to learn what we can, and you got to move on. But yeah, what you were saying about the G-tube, I mean, being a parent that has a child that doesn't have one, it is super scary because you don't think, like how you said, it's like a piercing, everybody imagines it. Oh my gosh, there's like a tube going into the stomach, and just the technicalities of it. I mean, I have a science degree, but that doesn't mean I know anything about G-tubes. And so, thankfully Troy's super skinny, but he eats a ton. And so we've never had to go that route, but it seems like a scary thing when you have,
when you haven't
no experience with it.
Yeah.
Well, Ruby, she does not take anything by mouth. She takes like nothing orally. So she has been, we've been trying to do she was in speech therapy for a long time, and we got to the point where we got like a bottle nipple in her mouth, and she was still angry, but she didn't throw up all over us and protest like she would usually do, but she still is just she's not having it. Nothing tastes good enough for her to not fight us, on it. And so she, like Ruby is, she's basically like a almost 40-pound newborn. So she, she's non-mobile, she's fully dependent, nonverbal, but her expressions let you know exactly what she's thinking. So we are not wondering whether she's happy or annoyed or angry that we're doing something. She still doesn't cry, although she just started, the whining started coming back. So we think that's her version of a cry, I would say in the last year, which has been really great. So, I mean, I'll take that as, a huge blessing. At least now, we know if something's really, really bothering her. And that's also great and sometimes frustrating because we don't know what it is. She can't point to it or anything like that. But, you just become a detective. You're just like, all right, well, something's making her mad. So let's go down the line, burp the tube, change her, take her clothes off. Are they too tight? You just go down the line. Before we know it, she's fully nude in the bed and just smiling because we're like, okay, well, something worked because now she's happy. Yeah, exactly. So it, you just turn it into a game. Otherwise, you find ways to just, find the joy in whatever it is. Otherwise, you'll go crazy. You will go totally crazy. And you won't enjoy your child. And that to me is what terrifies me. I want her to feel that, she's bringing me joy every time I hold her, because I don't want to regret, I don't want to wonder if she knew that I enjoyed being around her and something like that, when the time comes. So it's not just for me. I'm also hold her and I just say okay, thank you, Lord, she's here and she's smiling at me. And then even when she throws up on me or pees on me, which she throws up on me for fun. And that can be really frustrating. But I just have to be hey, something's working. So yeah, whatever, just go with it.
So when you guys got your genetic tests, what kind of tests did they give you? Like what was what?
So it was all, blood draw, but they when the genetic counselor called us, so she said that they were right on the money. That's exactly what she had. There were a couple of other variants that they didn't know if they were significant or not, but what was significant was that 100% of her cells were affected by this gene. So the likelihood, they told me, was that I was the sole carrier. But they didn't know I would have to do genetic testing as well. So yeah, I mean, I'd say that was the gist of the conversation, and the genetic counselor encouraged us to go see a mitochondrial specialist. So as soon as we got out of the hospital, I found one I wanted to see. So she got out of the hospital in June. At the end of August, we flew to Houston to go see the first mito specialist. So, I mean, the conversation was fairly short. That's just all she told me. She said, okay, she definitely has it. She has it 100% of her cells, which means you probably carried it, which was kind of an axe to the heart as well. And she said, yeah, I would encourage you to either not have any more like biological children, or if you do it through, IVF and genetic testing, and go see a specialist. Like, if you have any questions, call me back. And that was it. It was a fairly short, direct conversation.
And who did you end up seeing in Houston that was a mito specialist?
We saw Dr. Koenig, and she was great. We had a lot of information that she gave us, and she was, and I don't know if she's very frank with everyone. We only saw her that one time because Houston's very far from Chicagoland area. But she spoke to me just very directly, and she's just like, this tells me that she got it from you and only you. So I'm sorry to say that you're probably the sole carrier of this. She's like, I don't know if it's in all of your eggs. All I know is that the one that she used is all in there. And so I agree with the genetic counselor. I don't think you should naturally have any more children unless it's from, IVF and then testing embryos and everything. She gave us our first, glimpse into the mito cocktail. So after we saw her, which was great, I was very thankful for that. Of course, we saw her the day of the appointment is when Hurricane Harvey hit. So it was supposed to be a 4-hour appointment, and it was 45 minutes, and they condensed it, and then they were like, all right, get out, chop, chop. Everyone's evacuating. So, us being from Chicago, we, on the highway there, we stayed with my husband's family in San Antonio. On the highway going back, which was I think 2 or 3 hour drive, it was drizzling, and we were like, this is what everyone's freaking out about? This is nothing. Do they know what Midwest rain is and stuff? And then later at night, then we saw the very highway we were on was flooded and everything. So we were like, oh, okay, well, now I see what they're talking about. So they really do know how to handle their stuff. We thought they were just over exaggerating, but they were not. Just happened to be on the same day.
That's crazy.
I know. Crazy. Darn.
I think when I tell people, the first time we met with Dr. Haas, who's our Troy's doctor, and how he said, you should not have any more children, which now we know it's not necessarily from me, that he's a de novo mutation, but it's just anybody that hears that story that is not in the mito community is like, a doctor told you shouldn't have any more children. And I'm like, well, they understand what this disease is. They understand, so many different aspects of the life of someone affected by a mitochondrial disease. And they're being honest about, this is something that you need to take alternative routes, other than having, natural children. But yeah, Dr. Haas was just like, you shouldn't have any more kids. And it's like, what?
Mm-hmm. It's a hard pill to swallow, especially because we just have such mom guilt no matter what. Even if you had a great day where you were giving them eye contact for the 18 hours they were awake, when they go to sleep, you're going to have guilt about something you didn't do right. Or, I'm a terrible parent because of this. And that to me is straight from the devil, because it's not true. You're going to have it no matter what. But when they tell you that it's like your fault basically, and you shouldn't be having any more kids. It was pretty hard. It was very hard pill to swallow. And my husband was very, because I was like, he's going to leave me because I can't give him any more kids and stuff. And he's like, are you crazy? He's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And even to the point where I was like, do you want me to like let you go so you can go marry someone else and have kids? And he just was like, I'm not dignifying that with a response. I can't believe you just said that. And it just shows like how crazy I was like right afterwards. But
I said the exact things to Andrew. So
no, you didn't.
I said the same exact things. I was like, you're so much younger than me. You have so much more time. You have so much more life ahead of you.
Oh my gosh. He laughed, but he got mad at me. He's like, I cannot believe you would actually think that I would say, oh, okay, like, yeah, sure. But we have chosen to take that advice. So for us, like, we really thought about it. We prayed about it, and we're just like, Ruby's going to be it, for us, unless we really embrace adoption later, which we like the idea of. At this point in life, we can't, because unfortunately, because of all the financial restraints that come with this life, we have not been able to. Recently, we can't live on our own anymore. So my parents thankfully have this giant house that we decided, hey, can we move in with you? And of course they said yes. They get to see Ruby every day. So at this point right now, it's not the time, but when that time does come, we really hope to be able to do that. But as far as like natural kids, no, I think we're going to cut that.
Yeah, and it is great that there's so many different options now with science and with adoption and so many things. I know I'm actually remarried, so we were both like, well, if we would have met maybe 10 years ago, but definitely just with Troy, it's like we just want to give him everything that we have. And with a Mito kid, there's just so much that goes into it. And we're old. I mean, we're not that old, but, I'm 43 and he's, how old is my husband? He's older, and it's just, we want to focus on Troy, and we're happy with, that decision. But yeah, the fact that, there's different options makes it not an easier pill to swallow, but, if you want to extend your family, there are those options out there.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different options, and it really just depends on the people making the decisions. There's no right or wrong. And
exactly, yeah, I agree. I don't feel like there's a right or wrong.
Yeah,
and it's really like you both were saying. I agree. It is a hard pill to swallow, because, and on all spectrums, is like both of you are saying doctors told you to not have any more kids. I haven't had a doctor tell me that yet. I've had, and Andrew and I did look into our genetics a little bit more just to see where we could find Leigh syndrome. And it's hard whether you're 100% affected or 0% affected, because there's still no like guarantee, yes or no, what egg is going to be the chosen one. It could, and it sucks because like for example, for us, I did do more genetic testing, and they have not found it in me, which just makes it worse, because you're just like, but what, like, you want to put all your faith into that, but it's so hard to, because of the experience that we've had. And but like for us, you can so for genetic testing, just for our listeners, you can't I know we've said this before, but you can't do your genetic testing and test 100% of your genetics. It's impossible to do that. There's no scientific way of being able to figure that out. That's just how crazy genetics are. But you can get down to a certain percentage, and there's a few different ways for you to do genetic testing. You could do a blood test, you could do saliva test, a tissue test, and you can do a urine test, which I think in the past I hadn't mentioned because I didn't know about it. But going through the process over again, and a lot of times I think when people do extra tests, it's also just for your own self-awareness, because with mitochondrial disease, if you do have a kid that has it, it is a good idea for you to find out for yourself, because you don't know what your own future has, and you don't know what's going to happen. Because Mito, we have found, affects all ages. It's not just the babies, not just the kids, it is adults. And it just depends on the type of disease or type of mitochondrial disease that you're diagnosed with. So a lot of times people don't know that they have mito until you have a kid, and then you have your kid, and then you realize that you have it too. So it kind of gives you a glimpse into your own future. And it's part of the reason why we did it, to see what we had to prepare for me for the future too. But going back to what I was saying, going through those genetics, you only can test down to 1.5%. There's always going to be that shadowed area that doctors or researchers can't see. So it's hard because you want to make the decision, but regardless of which way you go, you still feel guilty, or you still feel like it's the wrong decision or the right decision. And there's always that fear in the back of your head with, even if a doctor hasn't told it to you, you're still telling it to yourself back there, you know?
There's a lot of like family and peer pressure too. So I do have a lot of that. You know, I think it was very hard for my parents and my family and my 95-year-old grandma to accept that we're not going to have any more kids. And they're like, no, you should just do it. And I'm like, we're not just going to do it. You know, we really just have to be patient and graceful with it, because they don't understand, and I'm very glad that they don't understand, you know? So it can be difficult. You have all these different voices, you know, coming from people who love you, but just don't want that to just be the end. And, you know, it's hard not to get frustrated, or sometimes to start to think, oh, well, maybe I should change my mind. But in the end, you go back to, no, we talked about it. And this is a decision that we, you know, have come up with. And so sticking to it can be hard. You know, it's hard to find that support sometimes, even though they mean so well, and they're just saying it because they love you, but they don't really understand. And again, I'm glad that they don't, but it's being able to be like, okay, I'll think about it.
Yeah, that's funny. We actually, for Troy, we just recently got another diagnosis, which is Marshall-Smith syndrome. So that's now his primary diagnosis. And, you know, we also found out that it's de novo, so it's not necessarily coming from me. And I was on a Zoom call with some of my family members, and they're like, okay, well, talk to us about this. Oh, so it's not from you. Oh, so are you and Tony going to have kids now? Are you guys, oh, that would be so awesome. And I'm like, wait, what? I'm pretty sure you all are on the same page with how we take care of Troy, and they've all helped. And I'm like, I think, you know, we're not doing this, but so yeah.
Well, like the diagnoses don't stop at Leigh syndrome. There's a lot of other things that come under the umbrella. She, you know, was diagnosed in June of 2017. Well, in December, she started having seizures. And they were different than what I'd seen and been trained on, you know, in nursing school. But I looked at her a few times. I was like, she's having a seizure. And, you know, and my husband, who didn't know granted, they were different looking. So he was like, what do you mean? Like, you know, I thought she just startled or something. But I started checking her pupils, and they were not constricting. You know, when I would shine the light in her eyes, and I was like, no, that's a seizure. So, and I do want people to know that, like, if you switch from one specialist to another, like we went from that original neurologist to another one, because after she had kind of maxed out on a few different seizure meds, they were getting worse and worse and worse. She was having somewhere around 20 to 25 a day. And while I was very grateful that he told me, you know what, I don't know anymore. But there was no game plan after that. There was no trying. He was just like, you know, I'm not sure. And I was like, was that the end of the sentence? And he was like, yeah, I don't know. And so I was like, okay, I want someone else. So I just got really frustrated, and I said, okay, we're just going to take her to the emergency room, because nothing is working, and I'm not going to be watching her have 25 seizures like in a day and just be like, I don't know. So we did. We took her to the Children's Hospital, and we got another neurologist, and like right away he was like, you know, I want to stop this other med. She was put on Keppra at first, and within days she immediately was so much floppier. And some kids it worked really great. With her, it didn't. It didn't do anything, and it just made her floppier, made her drool a lot more. So I was like, I don't feel right about this. And the Southern neurologist didn't like it either. So he took her off of that one, put her on one, and then put her on one more. And I think the catalyst, which made everything work was a drug called Onfi, and it was amazing. And ever since then, she has been so well controlled. And we've had to do a little adjustments here and there, but it's been I mean, she's been well controlled. I mean, she does take, seizure meds multiple times a day, but that's fine. I'll give her whatever she wants if she's going to keep, smiling, or even if she doesn't keep smiling. Oh, well, she's still here with me and I'm going to give it to her, and that's fine. So it is okay if you switch a specialist. Because I have talked to some parents that are like, no, I just feel bad. I'm like, don't feel bad. Trust me, don't feel bad. That's why there are multiple. Like, just find another one.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's amazing that you say that, because they always say you have to be an advocate for your child. But, I think when sometimes people get in front of doctors and they think, well, I don't, I'm not a doctor, or I'm not this, it's like, it doesn't matter if you're not hearing what you feel comfortable with, or they're not doing what you feel comfortable with for your child. You're the only one that is going to be able to speak up for that child. And you guys are obviously doing an amazing job. And if you're not happy with your doctor, you switch that doctor. There's so many ways to do that, even, with insurance, or, different ways you can get to another doctor that finds the right meds or does the right thing for your child. And parents have to know that they have that right to do that. And it's okay, because it could, in a mitochondrial case, it's about your child's life, and you want them to live.
I mean, working in the hospital for 10 years, trust me, you're not hurting their feelings, or their income to go see another doctor. So that's why I was like, I don't mind. That's fine. If someone gets mad or annoyed. And we did find a new pediatrician right away, and he is incredible. I mean, he is a total godsend. Like, not only, it's not because he, does what I, everything that I ask, but he's never even heard of like a child with a mitochondrial disease, which baffled him, because he's like, I've taken care of tons of kids with different disabilities, G-tubes, this. He's like, I've never heard of this. And I was like, join the club. Never heard of it either. And so every time he sees, or Ruby is coming in, he's done some kind of research, and he comes in like super excited. Like, I just read this article, about Leigh syndrome, but that they're doing. And he's so attentive to her. He takes his time. He listens to her fully, every time, even if we're just there for, a vaccination. He's like, no, I want to, I read that, these kids can have respiratory problems. So I want to make sure I listen to her. And he's just incredible. It's amazing. And he really trusts what I notice. Like, she gets frequent UTIs, and anyone who's worked in healthcare knows they all have a certain smell, and they all smell the same. And so as soon as I think I smell it or notice it, I bring her in, and he's just like, all right, let's get her started. Let's do this. And he trusts our instincts, not just me. So it makes a huge difference when you have physicians of whatever specialty, when you feel like they're actually listening to you. And I think because they know that if the parent notices this, they're with them all the time. It's probably what's going on.
I think too, you have to think of it as a team, right? Like, you are on your doctor's team. It's not the other way around. It's not, because it's not just about your kid's life, but it's about your life too, about how much stress it brings into it. And when you can go to the doctor and trust them, that takes so much off your shoulders. And it does take people a long time to be able to find those doctors. Like, we had to go through at least 3 different eye doctors for Angie, just because it wasn't cool. Like, the way that they treated us, or how long they made us wait. It's just, so you definitely, like you said, you interview doctors. They need to be, you're the boss. They're taking the job interview. If you get along well with them, then try them out. But if not, then just tell them to hit the road and find somebody else, because
I love that. It's a job interview, because they're, working for you. If it's an emergency, okay, that's one thing. But you guys have to be on the same page, and you have to be a team. It's impossible. It's impossible to give these kids the right care if you're not all pulling for them. They're the most important thing. And if you just have someone that's just going against you, again, it's not just them doing what you say. It's, they really have to feel that, okay, I need to do what's best for this, this child. So I agree. Like I said, I don't feel bad about switching. We've switched a few.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's hard, because I think a lot of people, they do have a hard time switching, because they want to put their trust into somebody, but sometimes the shoe just doesn't fit. You just got to keep researching, keep trying to find doctors, talk to your neurotypical families and your non-neurotypical families, and find the middle ground between the two. And also just like like our podcast, listening to the different family stories on who their doctors are, or social media, linking with people, support groups, all of that helps. Megan and I actually we didn't have the same pediatrician, but we had the same office. And so once Megan found out who my pediatrician was, you started talking to him a little bit more, right, Megan?
Yeah. We love our pediatrician, but he's only there one day a week because he's getting ready to retire. So we were like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And then I was thankful when we found when you and mentioned your doctor, and then also the nurse that you worked with. So, we've been calling on them for a little support. Thankfully, Troy's been super stable, and we haven't had to go into the doctor except for any sort of routine vaccines and things. But yeah, no, it's definitely an important thing to have a doctor that is on your side and listens to you. And I think we've been to quite a few little symposiums and UMDF type things where a lot of the parents, are in different areas where most of their doctors have no idea what mitochondrial disease and they don't have any experience with it. And I think that's a hard part. Like you said, you had to fly to Houston. And we're so fortunate here in California because there are, 4 big doctors that are mitochondrial specialists, in San Francisco and San Diego and in LA. So we're very fortunate, but there are so many people that don't even have access to specialists for this. And it's such a rare situation to where a lot of the doctors they're not sure, they're just not sure what they're doing. And so you have to keep searching.
We did switch to the Mito specialist, and not for any reason other than distance to at the Cleveland Clinic, Dr. Parikh, because it's easier to drive 6.5 hours than it is to drive like 26 hours to fly to Houston. Definitely cheaper. So that was the only reason we switched. Otherwise, if she had said, I think continually seeing her, I can help her and improve in this. Unfortunately with Mito, it's all a wait and see. Yeah. Not something they can predict ever. I mean, all of these kids, no matter what happens, are furthering research because there's so much, yet there's so little. So if she had said, I need you closer so I can do this and this, I would have done it. I don't care. It's just what you do. But a 6-hour drive is doable. Yeah, that's fine. So we decided to go with Dr. Parikh, and that's the physician we've been following up with.
So tell us a little bit more about Ruby.
Yeah.
Oh, Ruby's so sassy. I love it. I love it. It's like I said, she's so full of expression, and she is crazy about her dad. She is so tired of seeing my face because I'm with her 24/7. I'm rarely without her. And when she sees her dad, it's immediate, like doe eyes and these huge smiling, which is great. And when she sees me, we've tested this, she'll look at him and smile, and we'll turn her back to me and the smile slowly fades. And then she's like, I've already seen this today. Like, I'm done with this. She's pulled out her G-tube, I don't know how many times. So we know if we're changing her, we got to keep moving her hands because she'll do it slowly and creep her hands like this. And then before we know it, she's got it. Like I said, she throws up on me, I think out of boredom, like for fun. I think she's only thrown up on her dad like once in this whole year, but for me, I don't even know how many times, like I said. So I think she does it for fun. But she's very happy. She's super, super happy. She's an amazing sleeper. Like, God made her an amazing sleeper from the time she was like 4 months old. I think, because I think he knew all this was coming. So he was like, hey, you need sleep. So this is what I'm going to do. So she's a very good sleeper. It's rare that she doesn't sleep hard throughout the night. I can change her diaper and she won't even wake up.
Wow.
So, but she's a very happy girl, and I'm so grateful for that. Her smile probably takes up the 7,000 pictures in my phone. It's just her smile when she's sleeping all cute. You can't stop. And she's such a joy. She's a complete joy.
That's awesome. I love getting pictures of her. So Raquel sends me text messages of pictures of Ruby, and she's always smiling with all her chins, and
she's so chunky, and I love it. Like, she's lost a little weight since we switched from formula to actual like food blends. which is great because she needed to. Even Dr. Preek was like, I'm going to tell you just frankly, he's like, she's too fat. I was like, that's pretty frank. Yeah. He's like, she's too fat. Like, she needs to lean up a little bit. And so she has lost a little bit of weight, but yet like it's kind of in her face, but she still has like 3 chins for some reason. I mean, I love them all. I touch them all and I count them all each day, and she just laughs. It's like, all right, how many chins do we have? Like 1, 2, 3. And she just cracks up because of it.
Yeah, and she isn't like overweight. Like the sound of it when you explain it, it sounds like she's a big chunk, but she's not at all. Like I love seeing pictures of her, and she's adorable. And she has a lot of like outfits that Angie used to have, and so it's always so cute when I see pictures of her. I'm like, oh.
Well, and she's so tall, and that's what Dr. Perky, he's like, she needs to be long and lean. Right now she's long and round, and that's not going to work for her. And so I just laughed. I was like, I understand what you're saying. He's like, if her arms are too fat, she can't lift them. Like, you know, we got to be able to do that. And so my husband's 6'5", I'm 5'3", so she's very long. She's like all legs, just like him. She's more than half of my height now at 3.5. So, and, you know, Lord willing, if we see that day, he said she's probably going to be like, pediatrician said she's probably going to be like 5'8". So she's always like at least 6 months or a year ahead of her, like clothes size.
Yeah.
So 4T pants are kind of floods right now. It's a good thing it's warming up because it doesn't matter. It looks like it's supposed to be like that. But yeah, she's very, very tall and very floppy, which makes it fun to like, you know, when I have her whack toys, like with her hand, I have to do it with her hand, but she just has her own little version of a laugh. And when you hear it, it just brings my soul like so much joy. And, you know, how could you not? Like these kids bring so much appreciation and joy to your life. And it has really taught me to try not to compare her or, you know, compare her to other kids, whether typical or even other Mito kids. It can really just rob you of enjoying where they're at right now. I mean, there are a lot of, you know, Leigh syndrome kids that, you know, we've met up with here, and it's been amazing to be able to meet them, and they're further than Ruby, and it has you being like kind of envious and this and that, but really, it really just, it's the epitome of unconditional love. And I love it. And I would choose her every single time. I would choose her over and over and over. I don't care. Even in a worse condition than this, I'll take it. Bring it on. You're never going to regret holding them in your arms. It's amazing.
No. And I think that's, definitely people in general with medically fragile children, you know, it just completely changes how you look at life. It changes, you know, just what you hold dear. You know, it brings out the best in people. It just really does. I think a lot of times when we take Troy out, because we're not active now, but at one time we were, and I would have people come up to me and say, oh, it's so wonderful that you have him out and you guys are doing so much stuff with him. And I was thinking to myself, what's the alternative? Like, do we lock him up, or who have you seen that, you know, doesn't, you know, take their child out to enjoy things? Like, I think every experience we have, even, you know, when little kids are staring at Troy, because Troy's 12 and I'm 5'8" and he's as tall as I am. He's
wow,
super tall. So he's a huge kid and he's always been tall. Like you were saying how Ruby's tall. And it's just, you know, kids will stare because of course he's not verbal either. And, you know, it's just, but I feel like people are so much more positive. Like he's 12 years old. I've never had a negative interaction with somebody, even when he's squealing and, you know, doing all sorts of stuff, or, you know, everybody is just always super friendly with us. And, you know, it's like, they just want to know about him. And I think, you know, these kids, when they smile, when they do these things, it just touches people's heart. And it just, you know, even, you know, meeting my second husband, he's just like, you know, I fell in love with you because the mom you are, and, you know, how patient you are and this. And I'm like, I was not this way before Troy. You know, it's like, I think I was a nice person, but they just mold you into this person that you just are like, this is wonderful. Everything, you know, is special. And you have to look at these things and take the time to just notice all these little special things that they're doing, and, you know, with the people around you and how they interact with your child and how much love is there. It's just a whole different world.
it teaches us, it teaches our family. My sister who lived here, we had our babies with 2 weeks apart, and she moved here when her daughter was like a week and a half old. And so I had, her name is Johanna, like I had Jojo and Ruby, like they were together the whole time. And they have and now that my sister lives in North Carolina now, but they have always had this very amazing bond. My sister's older kids, they know that Ruby can't run around and everything like that, so they'll kind of bring her toys here and there, but they want to run around, they're kids. But Jojo will always come, and you'll see her like stroking Ruby's face and then being like, can I give her this, or can I give her this? And and they're the same age, but she just has a beautiful relationship with her. And I love to see that. And Jojo's always, she'll even tell me if I'm walking, she's like, you have to be careful with her. I'm like, okay, I will be careful. So it affects everyone. It affects your family too. So I love to see that reaction. It's my belief that, that's why God gave us this child for our family, to teach us to slow down and to teach us to appreciate, I think everyone just expects life and their children to be typical, and okay, where are we going to send them to kindergarten and this? And when those are kind of taken off the table in terms of like a typical life, I'm grateful for it personally. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I'm not just saying that because I have to, because I did have someone say like, well, I'm saying that because you kind of have no choice. So I was like, no, I'm saying that because I really would choose it over and over and over.
Yeah.
I think they look at sometimes the health complications. And of course, I would like Troy not to, have this, only 50% left past the age of 10 and he's 12. I would like, for him to never suffer and for him to live, the typical lifespan of, any human. But, we're fortunate with what we have. We're so blessed and so fortunate. So I think sometimes the outside they look at, but you have to do this and you have to do that. And you're like, yeah, but everything else outweighs all of what we go through. So. Yeah,
I feel fortunate that I still get to hold, Ruby. I mean, it's going to get harder as she gets bigger, to take her up and down the stairs, or, giving her a bath, it's going to get harder. But for now, I can still hold her in my arms and transport her. And I usually say I get to hold her because one day I'm not going to be able to. And it's training your mind sometimes, because you're only human. Sometimes it's hard. There are some days you're like, I don't have time for the breakdown that I need or that I deserve. But you just have to keep going. But I sit down and I have to pray. I have to read the Bible and just be like, I get to do this right now. Like, she is mine. And I have the privilege of holding her. I have the privilege of changing this diaper, darn it, that I have clothes to change her into because she puked everywhere. We're not hurting for clothes. I have another shirt I can put on. Who cares? I can wash this hair because she threw up in my hair. Yeah. No big deal. So retraining our minds, but also acknowledging that, like, you can't always hold it all in and keep it together. Yeah. And it's okay to sit in your car and cry. Because I've done that a few times and came in, puffy eyes, and my parents are like, are you okay? I'm like, I'm good. Yeah, things are great. But my eyes are puffy. I'm like, I'll go upstairs now. And it's happened, and it's totally okay. If anything, you feel better after that. We're not meant to bottle everything up. It's the one way to make sure that, like, you're not enjoying everything. Like, feel your feelings, feel your emotions. It's fine. God gave us feelings for a reason.
Yeah, you definitely, like, the things that you stress out about now versus life before Mito, like you were saying, Megan, it's completely different. It's like, you don't cry over the spilt milk anymore. It's just milk. It just spilled. Just clean it up.
If you have an animal, they'll come and lick it up.
Yeah. Exactly. Awesome. It was really great to talk to you. Is there anything else that you want to say or talk about, or any message you want to tell other families?
Just that if I don't know you personally or don't like see your face, on the like support group, on the parent support group on Facebook, which is great. I hope to. I'm grateful for all the wisdom that you put out, there, and you might not even know it. You might be in the beginning of a diagnosis or going through the grief stages of a diagnosis, or even at like the end of life, which is okay. You have something to teach all of us, and someone is going to need that information, and that comfort of knowing that somebody has gone through or is going through what you went through or are going to go through. So you have resources. You have resources around. And if you're talking with someone and you end up bawling your eyes out, then just do it. Like, it's okay. I've done it. The poor unsuspecting person who thought it was just going to be a conversation, like a next conversation, got my, tears and my ugly crying face, and it's okay.
Yeah. Ashley and I are very familiar with crying on this podcast, so.
I almost lost it like twice, but I was like, I'm going to keep it together.
I know, we say every podcast that we're going to have tissues the next time, and I still haven't brought them. They're still sitting here.
It's always our arm sleeve, or
it's it's fine. But I almost lost it, because every time you guys start, when I listen to the podcast, I'm in my car like, oh man, like I'm doing it too. Because the memories can be painful, just recalling them and everything. But knowing that I've learned something from every single stage, that I've learned something from every time that I've had like a breakdown and I can't keep it together. I'm done saying I'm sorry. I couldn't keep it together. I'm just like, I needed to cry. So you were around. You need to give me a hug.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, darn it, I'm going to get a hug and then I'll go on.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to go ahead and I think now is a great point to end the podcast. If anyone has any questions about what we talked about, or if you have any thing that you would like to share that maybe this story resonated with you, please put it in your comments, or you can email us at mitopodcast@gmail.com. I'm looking straight at Megan to make sure that I say it correctly.
Right.
So you can email us, you can post on our and comments on our Instagram. You can also post comments on our Facebook page, Mito Podcast. And you can also send us messages there. And we would love to hear what questions or topics that you have. And it help us to keep going and find more people and resources to be able to bring to you on the mitopodcast.com.
Yes, thank you so much for listening, and thank you for sharing your story of Ruby with us. And we wish you guys all the best. And thank you to all of our listeners out there. And we hope you guys have an amazing day.
Thank you for letting me share her.
Absolutely.